So you probably hear the advice all the time online. You got to have a growth mindset. Don't have a fixed mindset. You got to have a growth mindset. And that advice is all great, but it's sort of nebulous and it's not really easy to follow if you don't know what a growth mindset even is, or worse, if you don't even know how to get there, or if you have a fixed mindset and you aren't even aware of it. But a fixed mindset can be very bad for your career, and I am excited to have my good buddy Nick Mann on the show today, and he's going to tell us all about his experience with the growth mindset and how we can all learn a few things from Nick. What's up, UX fam? How's your mom and them? Welcome to another episode of Beyond UX Design. I'm Jeremy. If you're new here, welcome to the show. I am super stoked to have you. The Beyond UX Design shop is open. Head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/shop to pick up some big, beautiful art prints of some of my favorite UX and software-related quotes, or pick up some digital downloads and get them printed yourself. Pick up your paperback copy of Beyond UX Design, Master Your Craft Beyond Pixels and Prototypes, get free shipping on all orders over $30, and use the code LISTENER to get 10% off your entire order. Head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/shop to get your print on. This week's episode is brought to you by Backlog, a community of designers building their businesses together. If you've been dreaming of escaping the 9-to-5 and building your own business, Backlog is the community for you. Backlog brings together hungry designers turned entrepreneurs, all working to grow their freelance gigs, content, digital products, and design agencies. Join a network of like-minded folks sharing tactics, strategies, and systems to help you succeed. Head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/backlog and become part of a community that's building their businesses together. Don't wait. Find your path to independence today with Backlog. And if you haven't done it already, please consider subscribing to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you are a regular here and you feel like you're getting something out of the show, I would really appreciate you leaving a 5-star review. That'll help me out so much more than you can imagine. And as always, thanks so much to Chris, Siraquan, Stacy, Radu, Megan, Andrew, John, Mark, Kevin, Jason, Michelle, Marty, Tino, and Adina for all their support. And if you want to join these fine folks and many others and help keep the show independent and ad-free, you'll get exclusive access to the entire video library of episodes, including episodes before they're even released. You can get instant access to the video archives right now for as little as $5 a month. And for more information on how you can support the show and help more people find out about what we're doing, make sure to check out beyonduxdesign.com/support. And of course, if you think the show is worth sharing, then I would love it if you told some friends. So you probably hear the advice all the time online. You got to have a growth mindset. Don't have a fixed mindset. You got to have a growth mindset. And that advice is all great, but it's sort of nebulous and it's not really easy to follow if you don't know what a growth mindset even is, or worse, if you don't even know how to get there, or if you have a fixed mindset and you aren't even aware of it. But a fixed mindset can be very bad for your career, and I am excited to have my good buddy Nick Mann on the show today, and he's going to tell us all about his experience with the growth mindset and how we can all learn a few things from Nick. So you probably hear the advice all the time online. You got to have a growth mindset. Don't have a fixed mindset. You got to have a growth mindset. And that advice is all great, but it's sort of nebulous and it's not really easy to follow if you don't know what a growth mindset even is, or worse, if you don't even know how to get there, or if you have a fixed mindset and you aren't even aware of it. But a fixed mindset can be very bad for your career, and I am excited to have my good buddy Nick Mann on the show today, and he's going to tell us all about his experience with the growth mindset and how we can all learn a few things from Nick. Nick Mann as the voice of the UX Growth Podcast, but Nick is a UX designer specializing in creating intuitive and engaging user experiences across websites, mobile applications, and chatbot interfaces. As the host of the UX Growth Podcast, he engages with fellow UX professionals, discussing design trends and sharing valuable industry insights. Nick's design philosophy centers on understanding user needs and translating them into products that are both effective and enjoyable to use. His commitment to the field and ability to bridge the gap between user needs and practical solutions makes him a valuable resource in the design community, and I would agree with that bio. Nick, we are very lucky to have you in your show. Welcome, fellow podcaster, to another podcast about UX design. Nick Mann, welcome to Beyond UX Design. I am so excited to have you on. How's it going?
See, I'm doing as well as I can, as I was previously sick horribly for the past 2 days. I couldn't get out of bed, but I'm very happy to say I can make it here. I'm willing to talk with you, Jeremy. I'm so excited to be able to share some of my experiences.
Hell yeah, dude. I'm happy. I'm happy that you haven't died with the sickness that you've had. I am happy you're still alive.
Oh yeah, I don't go out that easy.
There you go. That's right. You don't have that fixed mindset, man. You got the
Mm-hmm.
growth mindset. Even when it comes to colds and what did you, the flu? I don't know. We don't need to break any HIPAA laws here. But anyway, I'm so excited to have you on the show today. For one, thanks to you, and then also thanks to the meds for making you feel good enough to come on.
Oh yes.
So Nick, I know I mentioned a little bit about you in the podcast, but I would love to know, tell us a little bit about you, and ultimately I'd love to hear about your journey from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset and how that helped you become the man you are today.
Yeah, so, I think it kind of started on how I learned graphic design ever since college and how I went into agency life. And I really enjoyed it for the longest part. I feel like that was always something that I wanted to be doing. It's just unfortunate how unstable life is, but also finding a lot more things that I really did enjoy, such as when I got into web design, I started teaching that. Then I got into UX from that. So I naturally progressed to UX from learning graphic design. And I think UX is just more exciting because I feel like there's more to conquer. There's more to learn. There's a lot more exciting things for that aspect of it. And I can still always have the graphic design background be useful in so many different ways too. So that's how I got into UX. Another aspect of, I really want to thank my first design mentor when I first met him, because I did not think I need one until he was able to talk about all my problems that I didn't even know I had. And that's the thing, I'm always about mentorship, because a lot of people don't know they need it until it's too late, or they are dealing with so many issues that they don't even know they had. And that's what I really like about that so much. One aspect of it was, not only like fixed mindset, but I was also having a scarcity mindset. I was felt very stuck as being a graphic designer a lot, because I felt like I was at the mercy of what is available to me when I was only looking too much locally instead of actually broadening my mind and feeling like, oh, I can only work with people I don't like because that's all I can get, when that is not true at all. I was just not comfortable about exploring other opportunities and doing the necessary work to get there. He even talked me into starting the UX Growth podcast, because he knew that I had the ability to do it. Because my first podcast, the Don't Quit podcast, so it's about self-improvement, and I really enjoyed it. And I always thought that I was going to be able to do that for the rest of my life. But it's an uphill battle being into that industry, especially becoming as a nobody, and you're against so many big names. Full-fledged teams, It's practically impossible, really. And I kind of had to be realistic with myself about what I can and can't do. And the UX Grow podcast took off a lot more when I actually tried to juggle both of them, and I can only choose one. And so it made sense to stick with the UX Grow podcast and learning. That was my first podcast, How to Walk, for the UX Growth to run. I know it's been a good journey, and it takes a lot of humility to be able to accept when a podcast doesn't work out, but you have a new one that does, and be able to focus more on that and actually something great. And it's something that it doesn't feel like an uphill battle all the time.
Yeah. So I love that, dude, because that actually, it's interesting. We were talking about, UX careers, but this is important, I think, for everyone to understand. Obviously, a growth mindset applies to everything beyond just your career, but it could apply to hobbies. It could apply to life in general. And it's interesting because it's one of those things. I don't know. Do you have kids?
Nope.
No, I've got two kids, and like something that we're trying very hard to like get one of our kids in particular, he's got this fixed mindset where, I can't do it. And we're trying very hard to think about that growth mindset and get him to think beyond just like anything. Like it could be a skill. It could be being able to draw. It could be being able to ride a bike. It could be skateboarding. It could be like literally whatever, and obviously career, your UX career plays something. And you mentioned something a second ago that I just want to sort of highlight here. When it comes to something like software in general, right? UX design, we're designing for software. Tools are constantly changing. Technology is constantly changing. And if you have that fixed mindset, you are going to have a very hard time adapting long term. And I think that's just something like, again, the reason why I think this is such an important topic, we could have a conversation about how to do UX design, what tools to use, in a year or two later, something would have changed. That conversation would be less out. Maybe the fundamentals don't change always, but the methods, the techniques, the tools, a lot of times there's new ways of doing things, and that's so important. And I love that you call out the scarcity mindset as well. So before, because I feel like I didn't even think about that being connected here, but it really is. So before we dig into the conversation a little bit, I would love to just get your perspective, kind of like level set everybody out there. A lot of people hear growth mindset, fixed mindset, things like that. Some people might know what it is, some people might not. And I'm just curious from your perspective, like, how do you define fixed mindset versus growth mindset? What comes to mind when you think of those two things?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is a fixed mindset is everything is set in stone. Everything you know is how it will always be. And anyone who works on tech will realize, wow, that doesn't make sense, because it's always changing. It's always evolving. It's always improving in any kind of way. So you can kind of see why having the fixed mindset as a UX sounds very counterintuitive. The way people use things is always going to change because products are always going to change. User needs are always going to change. What's a problem now might not be a problem tomorrow. Maybe a problem that people didn't even know what's going to happen is going to come in the future. That's the reason why the fixed mindset can really hurt our mindset of what we are trying to do as designers, as well as where we want to be in our future careers with that. And with the growth mindset is we are always learning. We are always adapting. And you are very aware that you don't know everything. There's always something more to learn about. There's always something that can be improved. And you really need to have that to become a better designer, because that's how we are improving. That's how you get better. And if you always, with the fixed mindset, you always think you are doing the best possible thing you're always doing. And that means that you're just going to grow stagnant. And that's how things get passed up on you, how like new tools and technology are going to move past you. And it's going to be like more difficult to keep up with it. It can be very overwhelming. It could be try to be very resistant to it, and all of a sudden now you're working with a team on it, and now all of a sudden that you are an obstacle within the team. So like as you can see, like it already builds off of a lot of problems, because even if you're like that with your work, you're probably also like that with your personal life as well. So like that affects friends and family. That affects your own personal well-being, about other things, happiness too. And that comes like from like a lack of self-awareness too, which self-awareness is such a powerful thing, because we are working in such team dynamics of like, how can we be bridges instead of walls? And I think that's why fixed mindsets create so many walls, where a growth mindset creates a lot more bridges.
I love that analogy. I've never heard about that, creating bridges versus walls. So I want to talk about something real quick, because I want to kind of go back to that in a minute, but I want to talk about something before I forget. But you sort of equated a lot of this also, what's the right word? I don't know the right word, but you also called out the scarcity mindset. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of that, I had never really thought about that connecting before, and I thought that was a really great insight. Tell me a little bit about that scarcity mindset and how that mentor you had kind of helped you think beyond, the scarce things you have locally and thinking more holistically. Yeah. What about that conversation? I'm curious. Like, how were you thinking before, and what happened after that conversation?
Yeah, so like, mindset? I'd just be sitting down with him, just talk about my problems. So like, what's stopping me from being where I want to be? And I think that's a question that every professional should ever ask themselves, to be able to understand like what are the problems they're having and what are the obstacles in that way. And it was very hard for me to identify that, just because I always thought that was the same way. I talked to my mentor about my issues that I was having with any opportunities I was having, and I just felt very stuck. How I have the scarcity mindset about that, and I had no idea what that was. Like, that was like completely new to me. And how he talked about where that happened. And I can't really go into absolute details just because I can't remember exactly. It's been so many years, but it stuck with me, where the fact that it's okay to say no to things that no longer serve you, because that means that you're saying yes to the things that will. I'm like that with friendships, where I only had maybe 4 friends. And if I lose any of them, am I going to get more friends? I don't know. There's no way for me to know that. Yeah. And it's easy to say that because you don't know what the future holds. It feels like with scary mindset is that you can't not only identify opportunities, but you can't really see the light of the stairwell, where you have to take one step at a time based on what you can see, and you kind of have to put faith that the next step is always going to be there. For someone like me who was not used to that, I think it was very difficult for me to like visualize that in a way, and how a lot of things in life, like you kind of just need to put your best faith that you have made it this far, and so there's no reason that you can't make it any further. So there is a level of like self-doubt I was always having on myself because of that. And I know it feels very difficult to process these things when it's not natural to you, and how you kind of just need to take it one step at a time to realizing that once I've also been like being more part of like designer communities as well, and being able to more understand other people. And that's shout out to UX design and communities. I think they're very powerful, very useful, especially on LinkedIn. I've really become to really love a lot of people like you, Jeremy. That's how I first met you. Very honored that you were able to support me when I had no idea who you were.
Oh yeah, dude. No, of course. Likewise, man.
I know.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I know, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and you realizing like there's a lot of people who have suffered the same problems as you do, and you're able to communicate with other people. And there's also a thing like, like imposter syndrome. That's always like the number one issue that I've talked about on my podcast, and how many designers feel that. How many professionals in general feel that, and that's just because we don't, like it's very much an insecurity to feel like we're doing something that we don't really feel we're good at, and because we're in UX field, it's so big, so we're always doing something that we're not used to. There's always something new, and that's where a lot of it comes to the growth mindset. That like, hey, you're not going to be, you don't have experience in this, but you're going to be doing it anyway because someone has to do it. And you gotta have to believe in yourself that you can. So that's like also ties into that stairwell of, hey, you gotta do the proper steps, follow the principles. As long as you're making one step at a time, you'll eventually make it down the stairwell. As long as you are just making sure that you are doing the proper steps, but also the fact that you are communicating with other people because you are aware of what you don't know, because you don't have that fixed mindset to where you think you know what you actually don't. So as you can see, like how a lot of these different concepts of the growth mindset really connects to each other from these different aspects. So hopefully I know I'm kind of doing a good job of tying these all together.
Yeah, no, that's great, dude. So you said something a little bit ago, and I just want to kind of go back, but you said that, it took someone else calling out these blind spots. And it's funny, as designers, we often like to call ourselves problem solvers, and we like to think of ourselves as, people who can get a bunch of stuff and then find a solution and all that stuff. And a lot of times when it comes to our own career, our own personal life, our own website, our own case studies, our own resume, everything, we have so many blind spots that we just can't see, for one reason or another. We've just been looking at them and it's just second nature to us, or we just assume that's the way it is. But there's a lot of people out there that are probably dealing with that fixed mindset today that are probably struggling but don't understand why. They can't get a raise, they can't get a promotion, they can't get a job, whatever it is. And I'm curious, when you think about a fixed mindset, what comes to mind as far as common challenges or symptoms maybe that you end up seeing with some of the people that you talk to with your coaching and mentor sessions and stuff? People that have fixed mindset but don't realize it. What are things that they're might be struggling if someone's listening today and isn't thinking that they have a fixed mindset, but they might be seeing these things? What would those be?
Yeah, you know what? How I always looked at it is like there's that quote of you're always gonna get what you have always gotten. If you're always doing the exact same thing and you want something new or something different, you're going to have to do something different to get that. So if you're always getting the exact same results, which is I'm not getting a raise, I'm not getting a job, I am not getting what I want, then we have to change what you're doing so that opportunity actually becomes a realization. And there's a lot of different ways to go about that. And of course, the fact is that if you're doing the same thing all the time, that's going to be your number one issue all the time. Also, the fact is getting feedback. I look back at myself, like I took so much pride in trying to do everything by myself. And the more I learned about the interview process of getting a job, you cannot do this alone. There are so many steps, so many challenges, like when it comes to building a portfolio, it comes for interview questions, even finding what you want in a job. It's just like, it requires a bit of a team to be able to communicate, to be able to figure out all the process and finding out like, what is it that you don't, what's good and what's bad. Like there's things in my portfolio that I've always felt like was just okay. Like there's nothing wrong with it per se, till I get talked about like, oh, why don't you do this? And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's such a better idea. So it's like it can help you from being good to great. And that's where a lot of communication of getting help really helps out, where I say, like, don't do this in a vacuum, because you're so many opportunities on the table that you don't even know, because you are trying to be self-reliant way too much. And that creates a lot of pride. And, like, that's a problem with, I think, a lot of designers can have. It's like, I knew it, there was especially a lot of graphic designers, where it's like, we have so much pride in, like, what we know is right, because that's what we were taught, and that's how it always
Yeah,
should
for
be.
sure, dude.
And then, like, we realize, like, that can get in our way, because not everything is worth fighting for. Because you don't want to be that designer that's always colliding with other people just because you're not having the way you want it to be. And there's, like, it's okay to some things aren't going to be perfect or exactly the way you want. But, like, if it solves the problem, it's like, learn to when to pick your battles, and, like, when to, really, and that's when it becomes, like, having that growth mindset to ask for help. Where our fixed mindsets is always, I can always do it because I always know what's possible, what's necessary. And as well as, like, when you're struggling with a fixed mindset and you're starting to get a job, all of a sudden it's less about what can I learn from this so I can improve. It's going to be, all these people are wrong but me. How can, and then, like, that's not going to be helpful at all, because all of a sudden you're never wrong. Everyone else is wrong. So, like, how can you get to be where you want to be when you always feel like you can never improve from that aspect?
Yeah. Now that's a great way to even just sort of maybe even summarize a growth mindset in one or two sentences would be, like, or a symptom that you're always seeing. If you are constantly blaming other people for things and you are not taking responsibility for the negative things that happen to you, you're not getting a job, you're not getting a promotion, you're not getting a raise, you're not getting, you can't get the seat at the table, whatever it is in your career that you're struggling with, if you're constantly blaming other people and nothing is ever your fault, I think that might be, just like you said, I think that might be like one of the best ways to identify that you've got that fixed mindset. And I'm kind of curious, like, I want to talk a little bit in a minute about some ways that people can start to create a growth mindset or adopt a growth mindset. But before I do that, I want to talk a little bit what you said before about mentorship. And you called this out explicitly as being a way that you kind of identified this because you had so many blind spots. And I think, again, a lot of us are like this. Mentorship, we talk about mentorship being so important and all that stuff. And I think there's a lot of avenues that people will immediately go to find a mentor. Obviously, ADP list, it literally says, like, they call people mentors and stuff, but I personally feel like that's sort of just this, like, it's a very shallow mentorship relationship, a place like ADP list. But I'm curious, I don't want to put words in your mouth because maybe you think ADP list is the best place to go, but I'm curious, best place for somebody to go to find mentors, to build that relationship so that they can find that partner that they trust that will actually be willing to be honest with them. And because a lot of times those are really hard conversations. And so where do people go? How do they find those real mentors?
I like ADP list for what it is. You're not wrong. You can be quite shallow, and the fact like anyone could be a mentor. So, like, there's some that are certainly better than others, but like, it's just like, I mean, same thing with any kind of mentor. Some people are extremely good at what they do, and there's some that are like, they're just okay. And so, like, a lot of it is also like personality matching with your experience, and stuff like that. So it's like, you may have to go through some, like, I believe I went through actually 7 of like initial calls to find out which one was best for me. So, like, I definitely took my time. But that's the thing is, you really shouldn't rush this just because one that really gets you is going to go so much further. So, like, you really got to take your time for the process of, like, what it comes from and, like, about their outlook and their experiences and how they go through addressing your problems and how you're best communicating with them, as well as, like, setting times and stuff like that. That's what I really, really love about a lot of the process. And, of course, you have to go through quite a few on a DP list because the quality can be all over the place. But I generally do enjoy it. I think I've had way more positive experiences than negative. So,
really, okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is from like a mentee perspective. So, as a mentee, going and finding mentors on ADP list.
Yeah, I think the only issue really is to find anyone who is available. Pretty much my only gripe is finding is a lot more limited than it should be, and it suggests a lot of great people who feel like they're available, but they actually aren't, and you don't know until you're wanting to sign up with them. I had to search for at least 10 to find one that was available within 2 weeks. I know.
That's interesting.
I know that's yeah. So I'm hoping to improve the search feature, especially for more availability that shows up. That's pretty much my only gripe that I'm seeing firsthand right now.
That's cool. My experience with ADP lists has been a little different, but that's okay.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
It's all good. But this is, we're not talking about ADP lists. But I'm curious, any other place? So you mentioned that you called out the availability piece. And so let's say somebody goes on ADP list and can't find somebody. Are there other avenues? Are there other ways that you advise people to go find a mentor?
You know what? Man, this is like the old school of like searching on social media and slide into DMs and ask. I think I know it's funny, man. I just did it to a random UX designer. First one I saw on Twitter, and he's been super helpful. He was actually my first podcast guest. Man, I really love him, Carlos. I love the guy so much, and I still talk to him to this day. How much he's helped me about that. I've even wanted to pay him, and he refused. He's such a great guy. But yeah, that's absolutely. I know.
You found him on Twitter?
Yeah, just Twitter. I was just scrolling out, saw his name. It's like, you know what? I'm just going to shoot him a DM.
Well, how did that conversation go? What did you ask? Did you ask him something in particular? Anything specific? Like, what did you say?
I can't remember the exact details. Maybe if I just searched on Twitter real quick. But it was just something like I was just like really interested in learning more about it. Like, what are your thoughts? And I was so happy just to get a reply, because I don't think there was like any reason, and he really helped me out, and I was able to form a really good conversation with him about his background and like what he was doing. I know, and how like give me advice for like my portfolio, and he's giving me advice on like job interviews. Didn't even fully understood that. I was getting that confused with a style guide between those two things, and he was able to correct me before I went to that interview. That would have been very embarrassing.
Context here. Yeah, to add some context, this was before you'd ever had a job as a UX designer. So you're a graphic designer. You are doing design, wanting to transition into UX design, and, self-taught, I assume. Did you do a boot camp, or did you do anything like that?
A lot of it self-taught, because I was running into web design, and a lot of the UX principles very strongly applied to there. So like I underestimated my own experiences, because talking with Carlos, like I made it sound like I was an absolute beginner, but like after talking with me on my podcast, you're not a beginner. So that's why like I had more confidence in myself, because I was actually I felt like I was putting myself more down than I really am.
No, it's interesting. Yeah, because I'm self-taught as well. And I started out as a graphic designer, web designer, early 2000s. Got my first UX job in 2011. So, about 10 years or so in the design industry before ever, getting a UX job. And yeah, it's one of those things. It's the Dunning-Kruger effect. Like I think there are people out there who think they know more than they do, and they're sort of at the peak of Mount Stupid. But then on the opposite side of that, you got a lot of people who don't realize. What's the opposite of the Dunning-Kruger effect? There's probably some name for it. But the opposite, where you think you don't know anything, but you actually do. And so, it's one of those things where, again, having that mentor that can point out that, hey, you're full of shit. You actually don't know what you're doing. What are you talking about? Or, hey, are you crazy? You know way more than you actually think.
Imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome. There you go. I guess that is the opposite of Dunning-Kruger. Yeah, but having that sort of self-doubt, that imposter syndrome, and actually knowing more than you actually do, and having that mentor actually point that out. And again, going back to this idea, though, of blind spots, to me, that's like such a critical thing. I think if we are, in this, you pointed this out, relationships and personal life and everything else, there's so many blind spots. And I think going back to something else that you mentioned before, it's just such an important thing to think about. I don't think you didn't use the term emotional intelligence, but self-awareness and emotional intelligence, and being able to recognize, one, maybe you don't see the blind spots, but at least recognizing that you probably have blind spots, and it's time to get a second opinion. And I think ultimately tying this all together, having this fixed mindset, a lot of people, I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong here because I'm not a psychologist or anything, but I feel like a lot of people that suffer from a fixed mindset, they just don't realize that it's even a fixed mindset. I mean, you could read a book maybe and have this like light go off in your head that's like, oh shoot, this is me. I have a fixed mindset, and then maybe work to change it. But a lot of times when you're blaming other people for things, or when nothing is ever your fault and everything is like against you and the world's against you and you're doing everything right, but you just need a break. I think a lot of times people don't realize that they might actually have a fixed mindset, and they just need like a kick in the ass to, point that out. And I don't know if you have anything else to add to that. It wasn't really a question. It's more of an insight, I guess, or just a comment. Mentor and the blind spots, it's just so important.
Well, I know, like, my heart breaks for like everyone who always feel like they have that the world is against me mentality, and they feel. I guess you can say it's also like the victim mentality. I see it quite a bit online, and my heart goes out to it because they don't know just how much they are setting themselves back because of that, because they're always blaming someone else for their situation they are in, when realizing they actually have the power to get out of that hole and realizing like what they want is actually achievable, but they have to get beyond themselves. And it's not an easy to do X, Y, and Z, because or else everyone would be doing it. There would be no such thing as victim mentality. Like it takes quite a bit of that self-reflection. It takes time. Like, like I make it sound like my scarcity mindset was really easy. Like it was a flip a switch
Right,
because
yeah.
I can look back because that was years ago. So that's the thing, when I'm talking years. So like, I don't think it took that long, but it certainly was like an over a day solution to it. But it's also like, you got to figure out what are the necessary steps you can take every day for it to really overcome it. And that it's a process, it's a journey. Going from fixed mindset to growth mindset is not a flip of a switch. You are essentially like removing the weeds out of your mind, I would say, for it to be
I
able to
like
grow.
that. I like that. I do.
Oh no,
Absolutely.
I was just gonna just reiterate more onto that, just because of like how can things grow when you have so much weeds? Like, trying to get into analogy of like how we have our garden. How can we have a beautiful garden when there's so many weeds in the way of it?
I love that analogy. So I want to talk a little bit about this. Maybe you can expand on this analogy if you want. But for those who are listening who might be thinking, damn, I think I might have a fixed mindset. That sounds like me. What are some ways that you were able to overcome that fixed mindset and get past it? What helped you? How did you go about adopting that growth mindset and leaving that fixed mindset behind?
I think there is a little bit of a hard pill to swallow about how people are always going to have different opinions than me, and how sometimes, I just need to respect that these people are more knowledgeable and even smarter than me, and how, I just need to trust their gut and just do what they tell me to do, especially ones like they are absolutely adamant of like, you got to change this on your portfolio, or have you considered doing X, Y, and Z? Because I did push back a little bit when I was offered the idea of starting, the UX Growth podcast. I actually would not have done it without my mentor, because I looked at it as work. I didn't really feel like that was going to be fun to do, because I just think of all the things that I would have to do. I didn't look at all the necessary rewards and fulfillment that would come out of it, because I didn't feel like there's no guarantee of that. That's why it was so hard for me to be able to understand that. And then realizing like, what, going back to, I'm always going to get what I've always gotten. And I wasn't getting anything with my first podcast. So you know what? I have nothing to lose. So I am just going to do it anyway. So that's when it really came down to like, I had to swallow that pill of the fact like, oh, it's going to be work. It turned out that it is absolutely worth it, and it's worth more than it. To that it doesn't really feel like work per se. There are times it can, but the output of it has been so great and useful. So I highly like recommend some, like when we have people, especially multiple people telling us to do something, you should probably do it. It really shouldn't even be a negotiation. Really, it's. I think we gotta just have to accept that. Like, if multiple people are telling us, especially people who have been in the industry that you want to work in, who have been there for years, and they're telling you to do this, you know what? I think we gotta just really stop thinking about the options and just do it. Just do it. That's what it really comes down to.
I love this idea. So when you started approaching it, was there anything specific that you started to do? So when you started to approach a problem and started to think in that fixed mindset, because it's a journey, right? It's not like something you can just do overnight. Caught yourself? How did you kind of keep yourself sort of in that habit of thinking in that growth mindset versus defaulting back to the fixed? Because it's easy, right, to default back to the fixed mindset. Was there some tip or trick that you learned to kind of like get you to think about the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset and actually adopt the growth mindset every single time that happened?
I'm naturally good about doing that, because the hardest part for me is always starting. And I think a lot of people can agree with that. The fact
Yeah,
that's like
that's true.
always the uphill battle. When I was very much overweight, borderline obese, and I had to work out and start eating healthier habits, like, man, that first week was brutal. But once I got through it, it started becoming easier. I started getting better at it. So it's stuff like that where the initial part of it is always going to be brutal to get through. And once you do it, it gets easier. It really does. It starts becoming more of a habit. You get the benefits of it. Everything starts becoming, more things start going your way. And next thing you know, it's going to be, wow, I'm not going back to that, because I'm going back to where all these things were terrible. I was not happy. I was not getting anything I wanted. Like, I'm never going to go back to that lifestyle again for myself, because I know all the benefits that happened because where I am today. You got to go through it. You know, it's going to be rough starting out. And no one's ever going to tell you it's easy, but everyone's going to tell you it's worth it. So that's the thing about it. I know we got to tough that out.
Love that.
But once you tough it out, though, it does get easier. It gets better. It really does. Even if that sounds a little cliche, it's very much true.
Yeah. I know you say you don't have kids, but there's this kids book, and I don't know, it's a weird book. The whole book's kind of weird, but it's like the whole book talks about, God, what's the name of the book? It's like going on a bear hunt, right? And we got to go. It's like, oh no, there's a forest. We can't go under it. We can't go around it. We got to go through it. And they have all these like challenges, and the ending is weird because they end up finding the bear, and then the bear chases them home. It's very bizarre. But the idea, though, that you can't go over it, you can't go around it, you can't go under it, you got to go through it. And maybe that's the lesson of the kids book. I don't know if that's what the kids book was trying to teach us, but be careful what you wish for, because you might actually catch that bear.
Oh yeah, that also brings up a point I thought of. The fact is that also, like, too many people use mentors as a way, as like a cheat code to get what they want, and thinking that like they can carry you to where you need to be. When realizing, like, like, you're the one who has to go through that woods. They can point you in the right direction. They can help you not get through any pitfalls of it, but you still have to go through that woods and have to make it through the other way. So that's also one thing, a lot of misconceptions people have of mentorship.
Yeah, I love that. I love that idea, though. That, the mentors are not there to be coaches either, which is something that I think a lot of people, they misconstrue coach and mentor. Yeah. And, if you think about this, like, a coach is there to be more hands-on. A coach is there to guide you. They're there to give you very specific tips and tricks and things, and really like give you a checklist and say, this is the plan, go execute it. But a mentor is not there to do that. A mentor is there to talk and ask questions and get you to think about things in a different way. Mentors can obviously give advice, but that's not their job necessarily, to be providing you with all of the things that you need to be successful. It's if you're not giving back to that relationship, and you're not, adding to it, and you're not, directly trying to have that conversation, there's no point. I mean, you're not going to get what you want out of that mentor relationship anyway. And so I think that's something really interesting to kind of think about is, that mentor relationship has to go two ways. And I think that's really important. And you're not going to get what you expect out of it if you expect to just have them be a coach and just tell you what to do and, all that stuff. That's just not why they're there. So anyway, I love that you call that out. Good advice.
Yeah, no. Yeah. And there's going to be times there's going to be hard talks of like, about being self-awareness of your own weaknesses and stuff like that. And you need to take that in, because if you avoid it or dismiss it, like, you're always going to get what you always gotten from it.
You're always going to get what you always gotten. I love that. I'm going to put that on a mug, dude. You always get what you always gotten. All right. So, Chris, I almost called you Chris. I don't know why I called you Chris. All right. So, Nick, we've had you for a little while now. And before we get out of here, I like to ask all my guests 5 little questions to help our listeners get to know our guests a little bit better. But before we do that, any closing thoughts? Anything else that we didn't get a chance to talk about that you would love to make sure everybody listening knows about that growth mindset?
Everyone has the ability to do it. If you're listening to this, you have the ability to do it. It's just about really understanding yourself, asking the right questions, talking to the right people, making sure that you have the necessary things, and realizing that a lot of times you already have it within you. I think there's a lot of times it's this self-belief. And if you need someone who believes in you, you always have me, because I've seen it multiple times.
You always got me. Signed, Nick. That'd be a great t-shirt. Sell it on your website. All right, Nick, I love this, man. This has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today. All right, before we get out of here, dude, I got a few questions I like to ask all my guests. First thing that comes to your mind, you don't have to think too hard about them. First up, what is your favorite non-design book?
Oh, man. I think Atomic Habits by James Clear is probably one. I'm a big fan of self-improvement, thanks to my first podcast, but I would say James Clear is probably the greatest self-improvement I've ever read. And I think he does such a good job of putting down a very complex topic of how we are always so difficult with our habits, in a way to be able to break it down in such an easy way to understand. it just makes sense and anyone can do it. I think that is the number one best self-improvement book. That's one I always recommend. If there's only one self-improvement book that anyone really should read, I always recommend Habits.
I love it, dude. I actually never read Atomic Habits. I've read like
Oh my
summaries
God.
and stuff, and like people talked about it, but I've never actually read the
I
book.
kind of understand if you read a lot of summaries, you could probably get what you need out of it. But I love the book enough to like, I love it from chapter to chapter personally. But I understand like you can get what you need from summaries.
Yeah, no, that's funny. I don't know. I've never read it. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, some people have problems with the stories he uses because they're not 100% accurate. But I feel like does it always have to be completely true to get the point across?
I mean, there's truth in the story.
And I feel like there's some people who are always or like they just don't like that it's super successful, super good. So like they have to point holes in it. So it's like it's very small nitpicks. So that's why I call it.
Next up, what is your favorite non-design podcast?
Oh my gosh! Truth be told, I actually don't listen to many podcasts.
Good
I know,
God.
ironically, because the reason is that I tend to overanalyze their discussions, their topics they ask, how they go through segues, how they answer questions, and how they go through like the pacing of it. It feels a little difficult for me to follow along to enjoyment for what it is because I'm always thinking about these things. And it kind of gets in the way a lot of times. Man, I was always, back like 10 years ago, I was such a big fan of Joe Rogan. He was very inspiration to me. Not really a fan of what he's doing now. Don't want to get into too much details, but
I'm with you.
I know, man. I just love it when he would just get his comedy friends and he would be doing some hilarious stuff with that. And can't say I'm a big fan of all the guests he tries to get on now either and stuff like that. I just miss his comedy friends and he was just having fun. Like, let's go back to that, man.
Like Joe Rogan, pre-MMA fighter, like back in the day when he was a comedian. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't listen to a lot of podcasts with guests and interviews. I listen to a lot of UFO podcasts. It's weird. Where they talk about UFO abductions and stuff, and they'll have guests on sometimes, but like paranormal kind of ghosts and things like that. But they like tell stories about like the thing. It's less like, interviews and like history podcasts and things like that, which is, not guests, which is funny because like, I don't know. You're not the first podcaster that I've talked to that doesn't listen to podcasts. A lot of people don't.
Yeah, I would say like my favorite podcast, if I were to listen now, is kind of like more just solo. I think solo is a lot better for me to listen to because with conversations, that's how I overanalyze. And with solo, it's easier to really focus more on the words.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, next up, what is your favorite meal?
Oh, I'm a big fan of catfish. That's my favorite.
Catfish, how do you like?
Oh, blackened. Oh, man.
Blackened. Ooh, all right. Where are you? Okay. Where are you from?
I live in Tacoma, Washington State.
You get a lot of blackened catfish up there?
No, you can't. We really have to go out of our way to find it. But I'm actually a very fan of Cajun foods, but those are my favorites. But yeah, specifically
right on,
catfish.
Dude. All right.
Yeah, there's one Cajun restaurant I really love. I cherish it a lot.
That's awesome, dude. I'm from New Orleans. I don't know if you know that? I don't know if you knew that. Yeah,
I'm
from New Orleans.
Know that.
Yeah. So obviously blackened anything, we take pride in our blackened seafood, poultry, whatever you're doing. But it's funny because down in New Orleans though, like when you do it depends on the place, but you do a blackened catfish or something, it gets like so smoky. A lot of times like restaurants won't really do blackened the right way because like it makes just smoke everywhere.
Yeah, I imagine like they just put powder on it and call it a day.
Yeah, you just got to like load it up with Cajun seasoning, like really hot cast iron pan, sear it both sides, boom, you're done. I love a blackened catfish with, down in Louisiana, we used to do this Meunier sauce. It's like an almond butter sauce.
Ooh.
On the blackened catfish, dude. Oh my God, so freaking good, man. Snapper, blackened snapper, or redfish. You ever have redfish, blackened redfish? I don't know if you get that up in Washington.
I have not.
It's a Gulf fish, yeah. But you got red snapper. Oh my God, dude, so good. Blackened snapper. Or redfish, one of them, either one. They're so good. I love that stuff, dude. All right, you're making me hungry. You ain't gonna expect to be so hungry at 3:00 in the afternoon. All right, next question. What is your favorite vacation spot?
Ooh, let's see. I actually don't go on vacations very often, for better or worse.
Really?
The grind doesn't stop here. But I would say is I like traveling to Seattle. I live 90 minutes south of it. I really love that city. I think there's always something really cool about it. I love that it's so close to the sea. I love the buildings of it. There's a lot of heart in it. I've always had good experiences with the people there. I know I always think to myself, would I like to live there? But there's always a problem is like the difference between being a tour there all the time and then living there. There's always like a different experience, especially because I don't really like the high living costs either, though.
Yeah, right. My wife and I, before we had kids, we went up to Portland and did a few days in Portland, and then we took the Cascades train from Portland up to Seattle and rode through Tacoma, Washington, too. It was beautiful up there. And a friend of mine that was from up there, like, oh, God, it's so pretty, we could move here. And he's like, come back when it's raining all the time and then tell me that you want to move here. But I guess where you live, it's not raining all the time either, though, right? Like
I don't really feel like it rains as much as people think it does. However, this like the spring, it can be like right now is very polarizing, where it could be sunny for about 2 hours, rain for next 2 hours, and then like hail for like an hour.
Oh God.
So that's the thing about like spring Washington weather. A lot of people are not aware of is like once it gets to actually good summer months, like it goes through like all these different changes throughout the day. Like you don't know if you should have a coat or not when you go outside.
That's funny. Is that all because of the mountains in the like to the east? And so there's like this weird kind of
it's something with our climate of like how the earth like warms up from the winter, like how that works from its positioning. No, I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, it's every year. So
that's hilarious. Yeah, I don't think I realized that, to be honest, with like the constant change like throughout the day. I did not know that. Cool. All right, Nick. Well, this has been amazing. I have had such a good time talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on. Before we get out of here, give yourself a plug. Let everybody know where they can find you, find your show, all that stuff. So, Nick, tell everybody where they can find you. Give yourself a plug.
Yes, the best way to find me is on LinkedIn, since I don't use any social media platforms. I've even deleted them all on my phone, and my life has improved so much more.
Hell yeah, dude.
So yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. It's linkedin.com/in/mandesigner. That is MANNDESIGNER. Remember, the Mann has 2 N's. That is my last name. So you can find the UX Growth podcast on every podcasting platform, as well as the website, uxgrowth.com. You can see if you enjoy this podcast. I'm sure you'll enjoy mine as well. Jeremy has also been on it, so we had a growable episode of that. Let's see, and you can also find all my Linktree links where I'm also doing, like for example, a UX Growth Challenge, where I have a newsletter where I post out every week for challenges to improve your UX design skills, and I try my best to do alongside with you, and we try to have conversations about how what we've learned and improved, and do that every week. It's free to sign up, so I'd love to have you join that if you like. So, and there's also a lot of other great things on those links too. So thank you so much for all checking that out.
Yeah, right on, dude. Awesome, man. Well, Nick, thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate it. I think this is such an important topic. Designers, they probably don't know they've got that fixed mindset. They're probably getting all kinds of crap. They're not happy. They don't get the stuff they want. And so they got to sometimes take a step back, talk to somebody else, and let them see that blind spot, and hopefully change your mindset to a growth mindset. Nick, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jeremy. I always knew that you can bring it, and I'm excited to always see it.
I done brought it. I brought it. All right, Nick. Thanks, man. Well, all right, y'all. That's it for Nick and me for today. I hope we helped to shed a little bit of light on growth mindset and what the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset, and how a fixed mindset might be holding you back. But I'm curious, were you suffering from a fixed mindset? And if so, how'd you flip the script? How'd you embrace the growth mindset? Let me know what you think on LinkedIn, or shoot me an email at hello@beyonduxdesign.com. I'd love to hear from you. If you like what you heard today, don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you feel like you're getting something out of the show, I would love it if you left a 5-star review. That would help me out so much more than you know. And if you know somebody who might find any of this stuff useful, then why don't you tell them about it? That would be fantastic. Don't forget to check out the Beyond UX Design shop. Head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/shop to pick up some big, beautiful UX-themed art prints and digital downloads you can print yourself. Grab your paperback copy of Beyond UX Design. Master your craft beyond pixels and prototypes. Get free shipping on all orders over $30, and use the code LISTENER to get 10% off your entire order. Just head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/shop to get your print on. Help keep the show independent and ad-free. Check out beyonduxdesign.com/support to find out how. You can join Chris, Siraquan, Stacy, Radu, Megan, Andrew, John, Mark, Kevin, Jason, Michelle, Marty, Tino, Adina, and many others, and help keep the show independent and ad-free. You'll get exclusive access to the entire video library of episodes, including episodes before they're even released. Get instant access to the video archives right now for as little as $5 a month. And if you're ready to escape the 9 to 5 and build your own business, Backlog is the community for you. Join a dedicated network sharing tactics, strategies, and systems for success. Start your journey to independence with Backlog. Don't miss out. Visit beyonduxdesign.com/backlog today. Remember to sign up for the newsletter and check out all the past episodes along with all the show notes at beyonduxdesign.com. I hope you keep coming back for more great UX tips from Beyond UX Design. And until next time, remember, you're more than a designer because there's more to UX and design. I'll see you around. Take care, y'all.